Welcome to Uncloseted Conversations. Even if you stumbled upon this channel by accident, you are welcome here. The stories here are from my heart, from my soul, from my pen to your ears. I hope that you will stay a little longer and open yourself to the magic of storytelling. Here I write fiction, and though not always aligning with reality, it still tugs at heartstrings. Stories are escapes and sometimes a balm to the soul. So, enjoy your time here, and if reality presses down too loud and too hard, come knock at the door, come in, take a seat, grab a coffee, and just exhale. These are veil-bound stories, and the space is free and non-judgmental. Sit back, earphones or pods in, and let's listen to another exquisite romance. Heart Volatility. When the numbers fall, the truth rises. Chapter 1. The Constant. The breakup did not come with shattered plates or dramatic exits. It arrived like a quarterly report. Calm, precise, devastating. Stefania Russell was halfway through calculating risk exposure on her tablet when Wendy said, very evenly, "You know you're in love with her, right?" Stefania didn't look up. "That's a bold accusation to make before dessert." "I'm not accusing you," Wendy replied. "I'm releasing you." That made Stefania's fingers still. The restaurant hummed around them. Cutlery chimed against porcelain. Soft jazz played as if the universe had hired background music for emotional collapse. Stefania finally lifted her eyes. "This is about work stress. I've been distracted." Wendy's mouth curved, not in cruelty. In recognition. "You light up when she walks into a room." Stefania scoffed, too quick. "She's my CEO. Everyone lights up." "No," Wendy said gently. "They straighten. You glow." There it was. The thing Stefania had professionally audited out of existence for 2 years. Glow. "I don't know what you want me to say," Stefania murmured. "Nothing," Wendy said. "I already know." Silence settled between them. Not hostile. Not tender. Just true. Wendy folded her napkin with deliberate care. "I deserve someone whose heart isn't buffering." Stefania flinched at that. Because it was accurate. And she hated accuracy when it turned on her. "You think this is easy for me?" Stefania asked. "No," Wendy said. "I think it's easier than loving someone who looks like they're waiting for someone else." The words hit clean. Stefania inhaled, searching for denial, for defense, for logic. Instead, she found memory. Amara Voss leaning against a glass conference wall, sleeves rolled up, eyes sharp and amused. Amara's voice saying, "Stefania, tell me I'm wrong." Amara watching her with that slow, assessing heat she disguised as leadership. Controlled fire. Wendy stood. "I won't compete with a woman who doesn't even know she's competing," she said softly. "Or maybe she does." Stefania swallowed. "Wendy." But Wendy shook her head. "You're brilliant. Just not honest." And then she walked away. Stefania sat there for a long time after the door closed behind her. She stared at her phone. As if summoned by cosmic cruelty, it lit up. Amara Voss. One missed call. One message. Stefania's pulse misbehaved. She opened it. "We need to revisit the queue for projections. I'll be in the office late." That was it. Professional. Controlled. But Stefania knew the cadence of that message. She knew the subtle weight behind it. She had memorized the way Amara's voice dropped slightly when she said her name. "This is inappropriate," she told herself. "This is a projection. A fixation. A misread signal amplified by proximity and power dynamics." She was a data analyst. She believed in evidence. The evidence was damning. 2 years of stolen glances. 2 years of meetings that felt like chess matches dipped in electricity. 2 years of pretending that the spark was just friction. Stefania stood abruptly, heart beating like she had just made a terrible investment. Chapter 2. The Spark Audit. Voss Enterprise at night felt different. Less corporate. More intimate. The building's glass exterior reflected the city like a crown of light. Inside, the corridors were quiet, the hum of servers a distant mechanical lullaby. Stefania stepped into her office, trying to steady herself. "You're single now." The thought landed strangely. Before she could spiral further, a voice drifted from behind her. "You look like someone who just lost something." Stefania closed her eyes for half a second. "Of course." Amara Voss stood in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled to her forearms. Her hair slightly undone from a long day. She looked less CEO, more woman. More dangerous. "I didn't realize my facial expressions were part of your quarterly review," Stefania replied coolly. Amara's lips curved. "Not wide. Never wide. Just enough. I review everything that affects performance." "Then you must be exhausted." Amara stepped into the room. The door clicked shut behind her. Not locked. Just closed. The air shifted. Stefania forced herself to meet her gaze. Controlled fire. It was always there. Banked. Measured. Watching. "Wendy was here earlier," Amara said casually, as if commenting on weather. Stefania blinked. She was. She dropped off something for compliance. A pause. She didn't look pleased. Stefania's spine stiffened. "We ended things." Amara went very still. For someone who mastered boardrooms, she betrayed nothing easily. But Stefania knew her tells now. The subtle narrowing of her eyes. The faint tightening of her jaw. "I see," Amara said. "Professional. Neutral." Stefania folded her arms, defensive by instinct. It was mutual. Amara held her gaze a fraction too long. Was it? The question landed somewhere under Stefania's ribs. "Is this relevant to Q4 projections?" she shot back. Amara took a slow step closer. "Everything that destabilizes my best analyst is relevant." Heat climbed up Stefania's neck. "I'm not destabilized." "No?" Amara's voice lowered, not in volume, but in texture. "You haven't blinked in 20 seconds." Stefania blinked immediately. Amara's mouth twitched. "You enjoy this," Stefania accused. "Enjoy what?" "This," Stefania gestured vaguely between them. "The psychological warfare." Amara's gaze softened in a way that was almost dangerous. "It isn't warfare," she said quietly. "It's restraint." That word lodged in the air between them. Restraint. Stefania's heart thudded harder. Restraint from what? Amara's eyes flicked briefly to Stefania's mouth. Then back up. Controlled fire. Stefania felt it then. Not imagined. Not exaggerated. Real. The awareness. Amara had known. Maybe always. "Don't," Stefania whispered before she could stop herself. Amara stilled. "Don't what?" "Make this harder." The silence that followed was thick enough to fracture. Amara's voice, when it came, was steady but warmer than it had any right to be. "I haven't made anything harder, Stefania." A beat. "You have." And there it was. Not confession. Not yet. But the first crack in the armor. Somewhere beneath them, unseen, systems hummed. Data flowed. Algorithms predicted futures. Neither of them knew yet that buried inside those same systems was a flaw sharp enough to burn everything down. For now, there was just this room. This tension. This almost. Amara stepped back first. Professional again. "Bring me the revised projections in the morning," she said smoothly. "And Stefania?" "Yes." A pause. "Try to get some sleep." Stefania swallowed. "You first." Amara's eyes flashed. Controlled fire. Briefly uncontained. "Good night, Ms. Russell." She left. Stefania stood alone in the quiet office, heart racing, truth finally clawing its way to the surface. Wendy had been right. The problem was never constancy. It was combustion. Chapter 3. Fault Lines. Stefania did not sleep. She attempted it. She lay in the dark. She replayed every word. Every look. Every almost. Restraint. The audacity. By 5:12 a.m., she was dressed, caffeinated, and pretending she had not stared at her ceiling like a woman negotiating with her own heartbeat. Voss Enterprise was already awake when she arrived. Markets did not care about emotional revelations. They opened at 9 regardless of personal collapse. Stefania dove into her dashboards with ruthless focus. Numbers made sense. Numbers behaved. Numbers did not look at you like they were choosing not to touch you. Her system flagged a minor irregularity in Q4 predictive modeling. She frowned. A fluctuation in projected capital movement. Subtle. Almost elegant in its invisibility. She adjusted variables. The anomaly remained. Stefania leaned forward. "Don't be dramatic," she muttered to the screen. "Either you're wrong or I am." She reran the data stream from the source. There it was again. A microscopic siphon in outbound data logs. Too clean to be an accident. Her stomach tightened. Before she could dive deeper, her office intercom chimed. "Ms. Russell, the CEO would like you in conference room A." Of course she would. Stefania stood, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from her blouse like she could iron out emotional instability. Conference room A was glass on 3 sides. Transparent. Exposed. Unforgiving. Amara stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled again, sunlight cutting across her profile like a deliberate spotlight. Elena Voss, CFO and sister, stood beside her. Immaculate. Controlled. The kind of woman who could smile while negotiating someone's surrender. "Stefania," Amara said. There it was. That tone. Not soft. Not cold. Precise. Intentional. Stefania nodded. "You summoned." Elena's eyebrow lifted slightly. "She always this charming?" "Only when under-rested," Amara replied smoothly. Stefania shot her a look. "I sleep. Occasionally." Amara's gaze dipped briefly. "I suggested that." The air tightened for half a second. Elena noticed. Of course she did. CFOs specialized in noticing. "We're reviewing exposure risk before the investor dinner tonight," Elena said crisply. "I assume you have something useful." Stefania slid her tablet onto the table and projected the dashboard. "There's a discrepancy in outbound data projections," she began. "It's small, but it's deliberate." Amara's focus sharpened instantly. Fire behind glass. "Define deliberate," she said. "It's patterned," Stefania replied. "Like someone shaving decimals where no one would think to look." Elena folded her arms. "That's a strong accusation." "It's math," Stefania shot back. "Math doesn't accuse. It reveals." Amara stepped closer to the screen. "How long?" she asked quietly. 3 months. Escalating. Silence settled heavy. Elena exhaled lightly. If this were real, compliance would have flagged it. Stefania met her gaze. "Unless compliance doesn't know where to look." That landed. Amara's voice cut through the tension. "Run a deeper audit." Quietly. Elena turned sharply. "If there's even a rumor of internal breach before tonight's dinner, investors will panic." "And if there's an actual breach?" Stefania asked. Elena's eyes flashed. "Then we handle it internally." Stefania felt something shift. Not in the numbers. In the room. Amara's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Stefania," Amara said, voice steady, "my office." "Now." Elena watched them leave. Not suspicious. Not yet. Chapter 4. The Glitch. Inside Amara's office, the door closed. Not slammed. Just sealed. "You think it's internal," Amara said. "Yes." "You're certain?" Stefania hesitated. "I'm rarely emotional about data." A faint flicker in Amara's eyes. "This isn't data. It's my company. And I'm trying to protect it." The space between them shrank without either moving. Amara studied her like a strategist assessing risk. "Do you trust me?" Amara asked quietly. The question hit harder than it should have. Stefania inhaled. "Professionally?" Amara's mouth curved slightly. "Answer the question." Stefania held her gaze. "Yes." Amara stepped closer. "Then let me handle this." The heat in the room was no longer theoretical. You're too close to it, Stefania said softly. Amara's voice dropped, not louder, but deeper. I built this from nothing. And that, Stefania replied, pulse hammering, is exactly why you can't see who might be willing to burn it. Silence. Dangerous silence. Amara's eyes darkened, not with anger, with something restrained. You think I'm blind? I think you're loyal. A breath. And loyalty can be exploited. For a split second, something vulnerable flickered in Amara's expression. Gone almost instantly. You're treading carefully, Amara murmured. I'm not, Stefania admitted. I'm treading honestly. Their faces were too close now. Not touching, but near enough that Stefania could feel warmth radiating off her. Be careful, Amara said softly. Of what? Of how far you're willing to go for me. The words were barely above a whisper. Stefania's breath caught. This isn't about you, she insisted. Amara's gaze slid to her mouth and back. That's the part one don't believe. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Elena's voice floated through. Amara? Investors are arriving early. The spell snapped. Amara stepped back first. Controlled fire. Recontained. Continue the audit, she said crisply. Discreetly. Stefania nodded. As she reached the door, Amara added, quieter. And Stefania? She turned. If this is internal, I will not let it destroy you. Stefania blinked. I'm not the one exposed, she said. Amara's expression was unreadable. Not yet. Stefania left the office with her pulse racing and the first real tremor beneath the company's polished floors. The numbers were wrong. The tension was real. And somewhere inside Boss Enterprise, someone was moving pieces across a board Stefania had just stepped onto. Game on. Chapter 5, Controlled Variables. Elena Voss did not believe in accidents. She believed in leverage, foresight, and cleaning up messes before they acquired headlines. Which was why she did not confront Stefania. She invited her to lunch. Neutral ground, Elena had said lightly in the hallway. You look like you could use sunlight. Stefania knew a setup when she saw one. But declining a CFO's invitation was how careers ended quietly. The restaurant was polished marble and understated wealth. The kind of place where deals were made without raising voices. Elena ordered sparkling water. No menu hesitation. No wasted motion. Stefania ordered coffee. Black. Because if this was a chess match, she intended to stay sharp. You're ambitious, Elena said pleasantly once the waiter left. Stefania smiled. I prefer competent. Elena's lips curved. You found something in the models. Not a question. Stefania stirred her coffee slowly. I find things. It's my job. And yet, Elena continued, tone smooth as silk over steel, not everything requires escalation. There it was. Testing temperature. Stefania tilted her head. Escalation implies danger. Does it? Elena asked softly. Or does it imply misinterpretation? Stefania met her gaze. You think I misinterpreted something? I think, Elena replied, folding her hands neatly, that young analysts sometimes mistake complexity for conspiracy. Stefania almost laughed. Almost. I don't chase shadows, Ms. Voss. Call me Elena. I prefer clarity. A flicker. Small. But there. Elena leaned back. If you're implying internal misconduct, that's a serious allegation. I'm implying nothing, Stefania said evenly. I'm auditing. And if the audit damages investor confidence? Stefania's jaw tightened. Then perhaps the damage was already there. Elena's eyes sharpened just slightly. How loyal are you? Elena asked. To truth. Stefania replied. Extremely. That wasn't my question. Stefania held her gaze without blinking. Then ask it properly. For a moment, the air cooled. Elena studied her. Measuring. Reassessing. Amara trusts you, Elena said finally. She trusts my work. She trusts you. Stefania didn't answer that. Elena's smile returned. Polished. Composed. Be careful, Stefania. Companies survive turbulence. Reputations don't. Stefania stood slowly. Then it's fortunate I work with data, she said. Data doesn't bruise easily. As she walked away, she felt it. Eyes on her back. Elena wasn't worried. Not yet. But she was calculating. Chapter 6. Sister Act. Back at the office, Stefania replayed every word. That wasn't a warning. It was reconnaissance. Elena wanted to know how much she knew. Which meant Stefania's screen blinked. An automated log adjustment notification. Her system access had been reviewed. Not revoked. Reviewed. She stared at the timestamp. 2 minutes ago. Elena was escalating quietly. Stefania smiled slowly. Oh, she murmured to herself. You're going to make this interesting. That evening, as investors filled the building for the dinner event, Stefania stood near the balcony overlooking the city lights. She felt it before she heard it. Amara. You look like you're plotting, Amara said quietly at her side. Stefania didn't turn. I am. Should I be concerned? Always. A pause. She invited you to lunch, Amara said. It wasn't a question. Stefania finally faced her. You knew. I know everything that moves in my company. Stefania raised an eyebrow. Bold claim. Amara stepped closer. Not touching. Never touching first. What did she ask you? How loyal I am. Amara's jaw tightened. And what did you say? That I prefer clarity. A flicker of something warm passed through Amara's eyes. You're playing a dangerous game, Amara murmured. Stefania's pulse jumped. So are you. The noise of the party blurred around them. You should let this go, Amara said quietly. Are you asking me to? Amara's gaze held hers. Controlled fire, straining against its cage. I'm asking you not to destroy yourself trying to protect me. Stefania's voice softened. I'm not protecting you. No, she said. I'm protecting the truth. Amara studied her for a long moment. That's what worries me. Across the room, Elena watched them. Not smiling. Not frowning. Just observing. The lines were being drawn. The test had begun. And Stefania had just passed the first one. Chapter 7. Breadcrumbs. Stefania stopped sleeping properly 3 days ago. Which was inconvenient because the anomaly had decided to grow. Not dramatically. Not recklessly. Deliberately. What had been fractional discrepancies were now forming a pattern across multiple departments. Capital reallocation models. Vendor forecasting. A subtle rerouting of projected liquidity that only someone intimate with the architecture would attempt. This was not hacking. This was choreography. Stefania locked her office door and ran a shadow trace through archived logs. She masked her query under routine system optimization. If Elena was watching, Stefania would give her something boring to observe. Her screen pulsed. Access tier, executive. Her stomach dipped. Executive-level clearance had modified outbound forecast buffers at 2:17 a.m. That was not random. That was intentional. Stefania opened the metadata trail. User ID encrypted. Of course it was. But encryption still leaves fingerprints. She leaned forward, breath steady, pulse not. There. A timestamp overlap between financial authorization and predictive recalibration. The credentials were shielded. But the authorization chain wasn't. Signed digitally by EV. Stefania stared at the initials. EV. There were only 2 executives with those initials in the company. And one of them didn't touch financial modeling. Her throat went dry. You can't be that careless, she murmured. Unless you believe no one can catch you. Her phone buzzed. Amara, investor follow-up meeting in 10. Join us. Stefania exhaled slowly. Timing. Of course. She saved the breadcrumb onto a secure offline drive. Physical. Old school. Paranoid. Because if this escalated, she would need proof that could not be quietly erased. Conference room A again. Glass. Exposure. Pressure. Elena stood beside the presentation screen, walking investors through revised capital projections with effortless poise. Stefania watched the numbers. They were clean. Too clean. Elena's eyes flicked toward her briefly. A fraction too long. Testing. When the investors stepped out for a private discussion, Elena turned. Stefania, she said pleasantly. Your anomaly? Amara's gaze sharpened instantly. Stefania kept her tone neutral. It's evolving. Elena's eyebrow lifted. Evolving? Yes, Stefania replied calmly. Like a controlled experiment. Elena smiled faintly. And what are we testing? Integrity. The word dropped like a coin into still water. Amara did not look at either of them. But the tension in her shoulders shifted. Elena stepped closer. Careful, she murmured low enough that only Stefania could hear. Allegations without proof are reckless. Stefania held her gaze. Good thing I prefer proof. Elena's smile thinned almost imperceptibly. The investors re-entered. Masks back on. Chapter 8. The Closed Door. Later, in Amara's office. Door closed. The city outside darkening into something more intimate. You have something, Amara said quietly. Stefania didn't answer immediately. She placed the offline drive on the desk. I have a breadcrumb, she said. Amara's eyes flicked to it. Say it. Stefania inhaled. It traces to executive clearance. Financial authorization chain. A beat. And the authorization marker is EV. Silence expanded. Not shocked. Not explosive. Still. Amara walked to the window. Her back straight. Unyielding. There are 2 people with those initials, she said evenly. Yes. And you're intelligent enough to know which one has access to financial buffer manipulation. Yes. Another silence. Amara turned slowly. Controlled fire. Contained. But burning. You're accusing my sister. I'm presenting evidence. Amara's voice sharpened slightly. You think I wouldn't know if Elena was siphoning capital? I think loyalty blinds even the sharpest leaders. That landed. Amara stepped closer. Do not confuse emotional complexity with blindness. Stefania didn't retreat. I'm not confusing anything. They stood inches apart now. This was no longer flirtation. This was fault line pressure. If you're wrong, Amara said quietly, you destroy her. If I'm right, Stefania replied, equally quiet, you're already being destroyed. Their eyes locked. The heat between them had shifted. Less teasing. More raw. Why are you doing this? Amara asked softly. Stefania's answer came before she could filter it. Because you deserve the truth. That flicker again. The one Amara tries to bury. Or, Amara said carefully, because you want to prove you're indispensable. Stefania's breath caught. That's unfair. Is it? The tension was unbearable now. Amara reached past her, fingers brushing Stefania's wrist as she picked up the drive. Electric. Unintentional. Stefania's pulse spiked. Amara felt it. Of course she did. Controlled fire does not miss tremors. Leave it with me, Amara said. Stefania searched her face. Will you look at it objectively? Amara's jaw tightened. I will look at it as a CEO. That was not the same thing. Stefania turned to leave. At the door, Amara's voice stopped her. If you pursue this recklessly, she said quietly, you won't just expose her. Stefania turned. You'll expose us. The words hung there. Us. Not defined. Not denied. Stefania swallowed. There is no us, she said carefully. Amara's gaze darkened. That, she replied softly, is the most dangerous lie you've told so far. Stefania walked out with her heart hammering and the breadcrumb burning in her pocket. Behind her, Amara stood alone. Drive in hand. Sister on one side. Truth on the other. And, somewhere in between, the woman who refused to stop digging. The anomaly wasn't small anymore. It was spreading. And someone was going to bleed. Chapter 9. The Subtle Test. Elena Voss was smiling, That was the problem. Not the polite, corporate smile. Not the calculated, I'm in control smile. The one that said she knew everything, and she enjoyed it. The breadcrumb wasn't subtle. Stefania had found it. Found her. And now the real game began. She summoned Stefania to her office under the pretense of a routine review. The office was glass, sunlight gleaming off polished surfaces, reflecting power and wealth, but also the scrutiny Elena intended to wield. "Ms. Russell," Elena began, her voice smooth, controlled, almost honeyed, "I noticed some anomalies in your latest audit." Stefania blinked. "Anomalies?" "Yes. You flagged certain outbound transactions," Elena said casually, leaning against her desk, legs crossed, holding a coffee cup like a weapon. "It's curious. Especially since they trace to executive clearance." Stefania felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't a question. This was a test. "I flagged what I saw," Stefania said evenly. "You don't need me to interpret corporate protocol." Elena tilted her head, eyes assessing, calculating. "True. But interpretation is often more revealing than data itself." Stefania's brow arched. "You're implying I misread something?" Elena's lips curved in a faint smile. "I'm implying nothing, yet." The room vibrated with subtext. Every word, every pause was a probe. A measurement. Elena wanted to know just how much Stefania understood. "You always seem to know exactly what I'm thinking," Stefania said lightly, masking nerves with sarcasm. "It must be exhausting, keeping track of everyone." Elena's gaze sharpened. "And yet, some of us thrive on complexity." Stefania didn't flinch. "Thriving doesn't absolve responsibility." Elena's smile deepened. The tiniest flicker of admiration and danger. "True. But sometimes responsibility means letting others stumble to see who's worthy of trust." Stefania's stomach dropped. She knew the kind of game Elena played. Subtle. Precise. Lethal if misjudged. "So, am I worthy?" she asked, tone teasing but layered with steel. Elena took a slow sip of coffee, savoring it like a gamble. "That depends. Are you willing to survive the test?" Stefania felt a shiver, not from fear exactly, but from the thrill of being in Elena's crosshairs. The breadcrumb was only the beginning. "You're dangerously calm," Stefania said. "It's unsettling." Elena leaned back. "Calm is a choice. Danger is a consequence." Stefania laughed softly. "I'll keep that in mind as I untangle the threads you're weaving." The corner of Elena's mouth lifted. "Be careful. Threads are easily broken, Ms. Russell. And some breakages are irreversible." Stefania left the office, mind spinning, heartbeat still. The game had shifted. The sizzle wasn't just attraction anymore, it was a warning. And in the quiet of her own office later, she allowed herself a small, private smirk. "Bring it on," she whispered. Later that evening, in the quiet of her office, Stefania replayed the encounter in her mind, noticing every micro-expression, the lift of an eyebrow, the slight tightening of Elena's jaw, the flicker in her eyes when she mentioned executive clearance. Elena wasn't panicking. Not yet. She was probing, testing, calculating how much Stefania knew. And Stefania loved the challenge. Because now the game wasn't just about numbers. It was about intelligence, loyalty, and who could outmaneuver whom. And the breadcrumbs had already begun to pile. Chapter 10. False Leads. Stefania didn't expect to enjoy office politics. She certainly didn't expect it to feel like a dance, one where every step could slice through your ribs. Yet here she was, in Elena Voss's office again, summoned for a progress discussion. Elena leaned casually against her desk, arms crossed, a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Russell, I've been reviewing your audit notes." "Quite thorough." Stefania raised an eyebrow. "Thorough is my specialty." Elena tilted her head, eyes glinting like glass knives. "Indeed. But there's something curious." You seemed particularly focused on the finance reallocation models, yet there's an anomaly in logistics. Stefania blinked, pretending to consider. Logistics? Elena smiled faintly. Yes. The inbound supply chain forecasts. Nothing major, but it's there. Tiny discrepancies. Stefania suppressed the urge to roll her eyes. A false lead. Elegant, subtle. Designed to see if she'd bite. And you're bringing this to me because, she asked evenly. Elena's lips curved. Because I wondered how you would handle it. After all, a competent analyst doesn't chase ghosts, unless the ghosts are meant to be found. Stefania's pulse ticked faster. Elena's testing. Probing. Seeing how far she would go without giving away her hand. Interesting, Stefania said lightly. And what would happen if I did chase it? Elena leaned closer, fingers brushing the edge of her desk, not touching Stefania, just close enough to radiate intent. Then you might uncover things better left alone. Stefania's lips twitched. Or things that need to be uncovered. Elena's eyes darkened just slightly. Some truths have consequences you aren't ready to face. Stefania's mind raced. The breadcrumbs she'd found already pointed to Evie, her gut screamed Elena, but Elena was clever, subtle. She could mislead, misdirect, even manipulate the trail. And some lies, Stefania said, her voice dropping, can be worse than the truth. The room went silent for a heartbeat. Then Elena smiled, faint, sharp, like the edge of a knife catching light. You're fearless, she said softly. Or reckless. I sometimes can't tell the difference. Stefania leaned back, eyes locked with hers. There's a fine line. Yes, Elena murmured, tone almost intimate. And I do so enjoy watching you walk it. A flicker passed between them, electric, dangerous, undeniable. Stefania's pulse raced. She wasn't sure if it was fear, excitement, or the sheer thrill of the challenge Elena represented. Probably all three. Be careful, Elena whispered, more a statement than a warning. Some tests aren't meant to be passed unscathed. Stefania smiled, low and confident. Then I'll take my chances. Elena watched her leave. Calm. Collected. But the smile never left her lips. Inside, she was calculating every move Stefania would make, every reaction to the breadcrumb she hadn't yet admitted she suspected. Because now the game wasn't about who had the most information, it was about who could manipulate the perception of truth without ever letting the other see the hand being played. And Elena? She was a master of that game. Chapter 11. The Provocation. Stefania didn't know whether to be annoyed or impressed. Elena had invited her to a late-night review session. The office was quiet, polished floors reflecting the faint hum of fluorescent lights. A perfect stage for subtle warfare. Ms. Russell, Elena said, voice smooth as silk, I was reviewing the same outbound logs you flagged earlier. I wondered how thorough you really are. Stefania raised an eyebrow, stepping closer to the screen. Curious. Or testing. Elena's lips curved in a faint, calculating smile. Does it matter? Stefania smirked. Yes. Very. Elena leaned slightly, a shadow of intimacy brushing against Stefania's space, though not enough to touch. Every movement was measured, deliberate. Every glance was a test. You're clever, Elena murmured. Do you always chase breadcrumbs this obsessively? I follow the trail, Stefania replied, eyes scanning the numbers. Where it leads. Elena's smile sharpened. And if the trail leads to dangerous truths? Stefania didn't flinch. Then I follow anyway. The room felt tighter. Every click of the keyboard sounded louder. Every breath hung in the air like a promise or a threat. From the corner of her eye, Stefania caught Amara leaning against the doorway, arms folded, silent, but radiating intensity. Every subtle movement told Stefania one thing. She was the only fire that could burn here, and Amara would decide if it consumed her or not. Elena noticed the glance, and the faintest flicker of annoyance crossed her expression, quickly replaced by that calculating mask. She was here to test Stefania, not challenge Amara. Interesting, Elena said lightly, pretending to review the screen. You're fearless. Or reckless, Stefania shot back. You'd know, given how carefully you hide your tracks. Elena's eyes narrowed just slightly. A test. A probe. Did Stefania see too much? Too clearly? Maybe, Elena whispered, leaning closer, tone low and deliberate. I like seeing how much you know before you step too far. Stefania caught the edge in her voice and countered. Then you should be careful. I don't step back from what I uncover. Amara's gaze lingered longer than necessary. Silent, commanding, the air between them charged. Her eyes said, I am the fire you can't touch, Stefania. Remember that. Elena smiled again, teasing, but Stefania could see it now for what it was, manipulation, pure and simple. Every feathered touch of her words, every flicker of her gaze, was a measurement of Stefania's knowledge. I wonder, Elena said softly, how much you understand about loyalty before it becomes inconvenient. Stefania's pulse spiked, heart racing. I understand more than you think. A beat of silence. You're bold, Elena said, leaning back, masking the tension with her calculated charm. Or foolish. Sometimes I can't tell the difference. Stefania's smirk returned. There's a fine line. Elena's eyes glittered. Yes, and I do so enjoy watching you walk it. Amara shifted ever so slightly, just enough to remind Stefania. Any fire she tempted was Amara's alone to contain. Stefania left the office that night with her mind spinning. Elena had tested her, prodded her, teased her, but Amara's presence had been a tether, a reminder of what and who truly mattered. The breadcrumb trail wasn't just a clue anymore. It was a magnet. And Stefania was caught in the field, pulled between danger and desire, between flirtation and fire. She smiled to herself, pulse still racing. The game was escalating. And she was all in. Chapter 12. The Masquerade. The office felt smaller tonight. Elena had orchestrated the scene with meticulous precision, dimmed lights, a spreadsheet full of anomalies highlighted in red, and the faint hum of the air conditioning keeping a pulse in the room. She looked the picture of control, sharp, poised, lethal, but Stefania could see through the surface. You've been very persistent, Elena said, voice smooth, calculated, laced with an edge of amusement. Even after our last conversation. I admire that courage. Or is it foolishness? Stefania smiled faintly, folding her hands on the table. Persistence is a choice. Foolishness is letting someone else decide the stakes for you. Elena's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. That tiny flicker of irritation was the only clue she had been caught. Interesting, Elena murmured, leaning closer, her presence like a controlled storm. You're documenting everything, I assume? Stefania's smirk deepened, faint and teasing. Of course. I wouldn't want to misremember anything, especially when the game is so intricate. Elena's smile sharpened. Ah, yes. The game. She slid a USB across the desk, subtle but deliberate. I thought you might like to review a correction. Some minor adjustments in the logistics forecast might clarify a few anomalies you flagged. Stefania's pulse skipped. She knew this was the false trail, the breadcrumb bait. But she played along, arching an eyebrow and picking up the drive with casual ease. Fascinating, Stefania said lightly, plugging it into her secured laptop. I love it when corrections are almost convincing. Elena leaned back, watching her with a satisfied gleam. Almost? Almost, Stefania echoed, scrolling through the files. Every file, every line meticulously examined and documented. Elena thought she was leading her down the path, but Stefania was recording, timestamping, and storing everything offline. Elena's lips curved in that sharp, dangerous smile. I think you enjoy this more than you let on. Stefania's eyes met hers, cool and steady. Enjoyment is irrelevant. Precision is everything. A pause. The hum of the air conditioning sounded louder. Elena's gaze lingered, calculating how much Stefania knew, how much she could manipulate, how far she could push. Stefania finally leaned back, shutting the laptop. All in all, very enlightening, Elena. Thank you for your assistance. Elena's smile was sharp, satisfied. I aim to be helpful. But she didn't know that Stefania had already shared her real findings with Amara. The conversation had been short, quiet, confidential. I have the breadcrumb, Stefania had said softly, handing the drive to Amara behind closed doors. It traces to Evie. Everything is documented. But I haven't exposed it yet. I'm keeping it contained. Amara had studied her silently, eyes dark, controlled, smoldering with an intensity Stefania always felt in her bones. You're protecting me, Amara finally said, almost a whisper. Not because you're afraid. Because you know I can handle it, and you want to handle it too. Stefania's lips twitched into a faint smile. Exactly. Amara reached past her, brushing fingertips against Stefania's hand, not overtly, just enough. Good. But remember, even controlled fires can burn themselves if they stay too long in the wrong place. Stefania's heart raced. I can handle it. Amara's gaze didn't waver. I know you can. That's why I let you keep walking this line. Back in the office, Elena leaned back in her chair, reviewing her own planted trail, smiling to herself. Stefania had taken the bait, at least. That's what she thought. Every false lead, every subtle tease, every spark of flirtation, Elena believed she was leading Stefania closer to exposure. She didn't know that Stefania had already won the internal game, storing proof, protecting the real fire, Amara. And as she watched Stefania leave with that faint, confident smirk, Elena thought, this one's deliciously complicated. Meanwhile, Amara's eyes followed Stefania from her office window. Calm. Controlled. Fire contained, but unmistakable. And Stefania knew it. Because in that room, in that city, between those three women, danger, desire, and truth were all playing their own rules. Chapter 13. The Closed Door. Stefania sat alone in the dim glow of her office, the city lights slicing the darkness through the blinds like a cage of neon bars. Every click of her mouse, every scroll through the logs, brought clarity and dread. The breadcrumb trail wasn't just a breadcrumb anymore. It was a map. Internal. No hacks from outside. No rogue vendors. The breach was someone inside the company. Her chest tightened. The implications were colossal. If she exposed it, the fallout would be devastating. But if she did nothing, Amara could be destroyed. She stood abruptly, grabbing her laptop and drive. It was time to confront Amara. Amara's office door closed behind her with a quiet authority that always seemed to echo in Stefania's chest. The room smelled faintly of leather and jasmine, a dangerous combination that had nothing to do with perfume. You found it, Amara said immediately, voice low, controlled, but there was fire simmering beneath the calm. Stefania didn't flinch. Yes, it's internal. Amara's eyes narrowed. Internal. I traced it, Stefania said, placing the drive on the desk. Her fingers lingered just a moment, deliberately brushing the smooth surface, feeling the hum of electricity between them. Every anomaly, every adjustment. Executive-level access. The breadcrumbs all lead to Evie. Amara's jaw tightened. Her hands gripped the edge of her desk. My sister. Stefania held her gaze. Yes. The air shifted. Power, anger, desire, all colliding. You need to act, Stefania said quietly, carefully. Not a plea. A statement. Amara stepped forward, slow, deliberate, closing the distance without touching her. The heat in the room intensified. The space between them compressed. And detonate the company? Amara asked, voice almost a growl, just low enough that Stefania felt it in her bones. Stefania didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't flinch. If we stay quiet, it destroys you anyway. If we act, we can contain it. But someone has to make the decision. Amara's presence was suffocating, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. Stefania's heartbeat thudded in her chest. The desire beneath the anger was palpable, coiling, dangerous. "You're reckless," Amara whispered, taking another step closer, her shadow spilling over Stefania's desk. "And I think you know exactly how dangerous you are." Stefania's lips twitched into a smirk. "I'm aware. And I'm ready." Amara's gaze softened for the briefest moment, a crack in the steel, just enough for Stefania to see that behind every command, behind every controlled movement, there was a storm of emotion. Desire, fear, anger, protectiveness. "Do you understand what this means?" Amara asked, voice dropping lower. "Once we move, there's no turning back." "I understand," Stefania said steadily. "And I trust you to lead. But I needed you to know. I'm not afraid to burn with you." Amara's chest rose and fell, her controlled fire flickering dangerously close to wild. She closed the remaining distance, her presence pressing into Stefania's, but still no touch. "You're impossible," Amara breathed, a dangerous whisper. "And infuriating. But maybe that's why I trust you." Stefania let herself breathe, letting the tension linger, letting desire and anger coil like twin serpents around the edges of reason. "Then let's be smart about it," Stefania said. "Because if we're going to do this, we do it right. And quietly." Amara's lips quirked with a mixture of amusement and something hotter, darker. "Quiet, yes. But don't think you can hide sparks from me." Stefania turned toward the door, but she felt Amara's gaze trail her, searing, commanding, protective, and undeniably theirs. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious. Inside, two women stood on the precipice of revelation, danger, and a fire that neither would fully admit they were ready to ignite. Chapter 14: The Investor Dinner. The grand ballroom of the Voss Enterprise Gala gleamed under crystal chandeliers, the hum of conversation mixing with the clinking of glasses and the soft sweep of expensive gowns across polished marble. Investors, media, and high-powered executives filled the room, each carrying smiles and ambition. Stefania had arrived at the last minute, summoned unexpectedly by an urgent email from Amara. She stepped into the hall, her heels clicking softly, scanning the crowd with a practiced eye. And there she was, Amara Voss, black-tailored suit that made her look almost untouchable, every movement measured, every glance controlled, but with fire in her gaze. Stefania felt the familiar pull in her chest. That controlled fire. That presence. As she navigated the crowd, a particularly charming investor drifted close, murmuring compliments under the pretense of professional interest. "Ms. Russell, your work on the Voss portfolio has been impressive," he said, too casually, too familiar. Stefania smiled politely, letting the words skim her consciousness. She knew the dance. She had mastered it. Then Amara appeared beside her, as if materializing from shadow, one hand brushing lightly against Stefania's arm, not intrusive, just enough. The investor's smile faltered. "She works for me," Amara said smoothly, voice low but carrying across the subtle space between them. Stefania turned her eyes to Amara, tone clipped, perfectly professional. "Professionally." Amara's lips quirked. "Of course," she murmured, letting the subtext linger, molten and undeniable. The investor stepped back, aware now of the tension between them, but too late to alter the perception. Stefania caught a faint smirk tugging at Amara's lips, a private spark in the middle of the public stage. Stefania's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the thrill of the challenge. Every step, every word, every glance in this room was a chess move. And she and Amara were already 3 moves ahead. A reporter drifted past, camera poised, snapping photos of the glamorous pair. Stefania kept her composure, letting the camera capture the image Amara had carefully curated, powerful, unshakable, untouchable, together. Later, as they moved through clusters of investors, Amara's presence pressed subtly, a quiet heat against Stefania's side, a reminder that no one, not Elena, not the crowd, could touch the connection they shared. "And the portfolio?" Amara asked softly, leaning just enough to make Stefania feel the warmth of her body, voice carrying that familiar fire. Stefania smirked, calm, composed, letting the tension thrum like electricity. "Safe. Balanced. Not a single anomaly exposed tonight." Amara's gaze lingered, controlled but smoldering, warning Stefania that she owned not just the company, but the fire in her chest. "Good," Amara said, straightening, resuming her perfect public mask. "We wouldn't want anyone thinking otherwise." Stefania allowed herself a small, private smile. The dance was far from over. Every word, every look, every flicker of controlled desire had set the stage for what was coming. And somewhere in the crowd, Elena was probably watching, unaware that the real game had already moved far beyond her reach. Chapter 15. Wendy's Accidental Bomb. The hum of computers filled the small compliance office at Voss Enterprises' partner firm, a dull but steady heartbeat against the soft clicks of keyboards. Wendy sat at her desk, coffee cooling beside her, scanning security logs with her usual meticulous care. Her brow furrowed as she noticed irregularities in data transfers, patterns that didn't match the expected schedule. "Odd," she muttered to herself, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "These shouldn't be happening." She hesitated, unsure if she was seeing something trivial or catastrophic. After a pause, she flagged the issue formally, sending an automatic report up the chain. Unaware of the consequences, she leaned back, sipping her coffee, entirely oblivious that she had just lit the fuse. Back at Voss Enterprise, Stefania's phone buzzed. Her stomach dropped before she even looked. The alert, "Regulatory inquiry initiated." "No," she whispered, fingers trembling as she opened the notification. It was too late. Wendy's well-meaning diligence had just triggered the exact scenario Stefania had been trying to avoid. Every breadcrumb she'd traced, every precaution she'd taken, now threatened to explode into public scrutiny. Her mind raced. Investors, board members, media, the public eye. She called Amara immediately. Amara answered on the second ring, voice calm but sharp. "Stefania." "We have a problem," Stefania said, her usual composure cracking. "Wendy, she's flagged the irregular transfers. Regulatory ping. It's active." Amara's silence stretched, controlled, like steel under pressure. What? "I know she didn't know," Stefania said quickly. "It was an accident, but the inquiries live. We can't stop it now." Amara's fingers drummed against her desk. Her gaze sharpened, a flicker of real danger beneath her otherwise controlled fire. "Then we contain it. Immediately. Quietly. Before the media smells smoke." Stefania exhaled, tension knotting her shoulders. "I'll handle it. But it's moving faster than I anticipated. Investors will panic. The firm, it's going to look catastrophic." Amara's tone softened, just slightly, a rare warmth threading through the urgency. "You're the only one I trust to manage it." Stefania's pulse quickened. The weight of the company rested on her shoulders, and, unspoken, the safety of Amara herself. She straightened, taking a deep breath. "Then let's contain the fire before it burns everything down." Amara's eyes flicked toward the window, the city lights gleaming like distant stars. "Do it. And Stefania, remember what matters. Not the company. Not the investors. You." Stefania allowed herself a brief, private smile, though her heart still raced. The game had just escalated to all-out survival mode. And now every decision, every move, every word could either protect or destroy them all. Outside, Wendy sipped her coffee innocently, unaware she had just become the catalyst for chaos, the spark that would ignite a chain reaction nobody could contain. Inside Voss Enterprise, controlled fires were about to clash with uncontrolled consequences, and Stefania knew that once the fuse was lit, there would be no going back. Chapter 16. Public Panic. The office felt like a war zone. Screens flashed with news headlines, social media alerts pinged relentlessly, and the stock ticker was a downward spiral that made Stefania's stomach lurch. Voss Enterprise hit by data breach. Regulatory inquiry initiated. Investors fear massive internal fraud. Stefania ran a hand over her face. Wendy's accidental flag had become a full-blown firestorm. The boardroom was a pressure cooker. Executives whispered, some panicking, others trying to mask fear behind clipped nods and clenched jaws. Amara stood at the head of the table, perfectly composed in her black suit, but Stefania could see the edges of tension sharpening her jaw, the faint tremor in her fingers as she weighed every option. Elena sat off to the side, cool, calculating, denying everything with effortless charm. No irregularities were conducted for my team, she said smoothly, voice carrying in the room. Any anomalies must be systemic. A flaw in your systems, perhaps. Stefania's eyes narrowed. That's a lie, she said bluntly. And you know it. Elena's smile flickered, just for a heartbeat. The first crack. Amara's gaze snapped to Stefania, intense, protective, smoldering. The weight of the company, the board, and the public now rested squarely on her shoulders. She had two impossible choices. A. Protect her sister, Elena, by blaming a system flaw and contain the fallout, potentially letting a criminal act slide. B. Expose Elena, destroy her sister's career, and risk investors fleeing, sending Voss Enterprise into an ash pile. Stefania stepped closer, voice calm but sharp, cutting through the tension. Amara, truth is the only way forward. If we cover this up, we're complicit. If we expose it, we control the narrative. We survive by being honest. Amara's eyes darkened, the fire beneath her control flaring. You want me to destroy my own blood? I want you to save everything else, Stefania countered. You can protect the company without sacrificing your integrity. And if Elena goes down, she brought this on herself. The room held its breath. Board members froze mid-gesture, sensing the tension spike. Elena's calm veneer cracked just enough for Stefania to see the first tremor of fear in her posture. Amara stepped closer to Stefania, the air between them charged with desire and unspoken trust. Every movement was a silent affirmation. I trust you. I need you. You're reckless, Amara said, voice low, dangerous, controlled. And I might just be reckless enough to follow your advice. Stefania smirked, stepping into that fire. Good. Because I don't make moves I can't handle. Amara's jaw flexed. She glanced at Elena, who maintained a fragile composure, denying everything, and then back at Stefania. Her decision hung in the balance. Finally, Amara exhaled, slow and deliberate, a controlled inferno behind her calm exterior. Truth it is, she said. But we move carefully. Every step must be measured. And no one will touch you while I do this. Stefania's chest swelled. The stakes were astronomical, the tension between them palpable, and the city outside, still oblivious to the controlled fire about to erupt. Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. Her denial was losing power, and she knew it. Stefania turned to Amara, whispering just for her, let's make sure the storm burns for the right people, and only for the right reasons. Amara's hand brushed against Stefania's shoulder, brief, intentional, protective. Only for us, she murmured. And with that, the boardroom erupted into debate, chaos, and strategizing, while outside, the public panic raged, the stock plummeted, and the game of truth, trust, and fire reached a new fever pitch. Chapter 17. The Confrontation. The boardroom was electric. Papers shuffled, murmurs rose, but all eyes were on Amara as she stood at the head of the table, sharp as obsidian, black suit flawless, voice cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. "Elena," Amara said, voice low, deliberate, carrying authority that silenced the room instantly. "We need to talk." Elena straightened, confident, but there was a slight tremor in her hands, a crack in her polished veneer. "I've done nothing wrong," she said smoothly, though her eyes flickered toward Stefania, sensing the silent alliance forming. Stefania watched from the side, heart pounding, adrenaline coiling in her chest. Every log she had documented, every anomaly traced, was in her hands now, ready to be wielded. But she let Amara take the lead, knowing that Amara's fire, controlled or not, was the only force that could bring Elena down without igniting the entire company. Amara's gaze pinned Elena in place. "You did this. Not by accident, but deliberately. The data breaches, the manipulation, every breadcrumb led to you. And I will not let it stand." Stefania stepped forward, calm and precise. "The regulatory inquiry has been contained, but only because we acted fast. All evidence is documented. Every move Elena made has been recorded, time-stamped, and secured." Elena's smirk faltered. You think you can trap me?" "No," Stefania said softly, eyes locked with hers, a spark of fire lacing her calm tone. "I know I already have." Amara closed the final gap between her and Elena. The air between the three women crackled. Desire, anger, power, unrelenting, palpable. Every movement measured, every glance a weapon. "You need to resign," Amara said, voice ice and fire combined. "Now. Or the board and regulators will do it for you. Your choice is final." Elena's lips pressed into a tight line. "And if I refuse?" Amara's eyes flickered with controlled fury. "Then I expose everything. And make sure every investor understands why Voss Enterprise remains unbroken, because we crushed internal betrayal before it destroyed us." Stefania's pulse spiked as she watched the interaction. Amara's dominance was intoxicating. Her presence pressed into Stefania without touch, asserting power, desire, and protection all at once. "Let's make this clean," Stefania said, stepping closer to Amara, voice a quiet counterpoint to the storm. "Contain the damage, secure the proof, and neutralize Elena. We do it together." Amara's gaze flickered to Stefania, a smoldering acknowledgement. "Together," she echoed, voice thick with fire. Elena swallowed hard, realizing she had lost control. "This isn't over," she spat, voice trembling with both fear and pride. "It is," Amara said flatly. "For you." Stefania moved to Elena's workstation, securing all files, logs, and communications. Every trace of the breach, every attempt to obscure the truth, now safely contained under their command. The tension didn't fade with Elena's resignation. No, it shifted, redirected toward the two women who had orchestrated the storm. Amara's presence loomed closer, shoulders just brushing, their breath mingling. Stefania's pulse raced, a mixture of relief, triumph, and that unspoken fire simmering between them. "You handled that beautifully," Amara murmured, voice low, just for Stefania. Stefania let herself smirk, bold and teasing. "I had a good teacher." Amara's lips twitched, just a fraction, a predator and prey smile that left no doubt of intent. "And yet," she whispered, moving a fraction closer, "I think I might have taught you a few lessons too." Stefania's heart skipped. "Careful," she said softly, "or I'll start thinking I'm the one in charge here." Amara's laugh was low, dangerous, delicious. "We both know who holds the fire," she said, eyes dark, smoldering, impossible to ignore. And for the first time that day, Stefania let herself breathe, not from victory alone, but from the controlled, combustible, undeniable connection that had been simmering since the first glance, the first spark, the first breadcrumb. Elena was neutralized. The company secured. And between Stefania and Amara, the fire had finally broken free of restraint, simmering, but now untouchable, just for them. Chapter 18, Reckoning. The penthouse suite was quiet, but the city lights outside flickered like distant embers, reflecting the storm that had been building between them for months. Stefania had expected tension, yes, but nothing could have prepared her for the intensity in the air the moment Amara closed the door behind them. Amara leaned against the edge of the grand desk, black suit still immaculate, eyes dark, piercing. The controlled fire she always carried was now smoldering, ready to ignite. "You've been hiding it," Amara said softly, taking a step closer. "All this time, pretending we're just colleagues, just professional sparks in a crowded office." Stefania's pulse jumped. She let herself step closer too, the air between them crackling. "Hiding what?" she teased, voice low, teasing, but her eyes didn't lie. Amara's lips curved, just slightly. "This." She lifted a hand, brushing a strand of hair behind Stefania's ear. The touch was gentle, purposeful, sending electricity straight through her. "All the longing, the frustration, the fire you pretend isn't there." Stefania swallowed, the words lodged in her throat. She had tried to deny it, tried to hide it, even from herself, but months of stolen glances, charged conversations, and playful banter had built an inferno that could no longer be contained. "You mean," Stefania began, voice husky, stepping even closer, "the thing that's been burning between us since day one?" Amara's gaze darkened, smoldering. "Exactly." The tension exploded. One hand brushed against another, lingering, exploring, sending heat racing through both of them. Every touch was deliberate, every glance a spark. Stefania could feel Amara's control slipping, not in a weakness, but in a wild, molten desire she'd only ever glimpsed before. "You've been careful," Amara murmured, voice low, dangerous. "Careful not to cross lines, careful not to burn too brightly, but I see it now. And I can't hold back anymore." Stefania's lips curved into a daring, knowing smile. "Neither can I." Amara stepped closer, until the space between them was electric, unavoidable. Their breaths mingled, and the air was thick with months of tension, teasing, and unspoken desire. "Do you know how long I've wanted this?" Amara whispered, hand sliding along Stefania's arm, down to her wrist. "To feel this, to own this fire with you?" Stefania's voice was barely a whisper. "Long enough to know it's only you who can burn me like this." The room seemed to shrink around them. One deliberate movement, one slow, teasing step closer, and they collided, not violently, but with the kind of intensity that left no room for restraint. Amara's lips brushed Stefania's, a slow, electrifying kiss that carried months of flirtation, longing, and tension in a single moment. Stefania responded immediately, matching the heat, the fire, the dangerous spark that had always simmered beneath Amara's perfect control. Hands explored carefully at first, testing boundaries, savoring the thrill. And then, the restraint shattered. Clothes shifted, skin brushed, and every nerve ignited. Every look, every gasp, every sigh became proof of the fire they had been denying for so long. Between kisses, between touches, Stefania whispered, "I've wanted this, you, for so long." Amara's voice was hoarse, a mixture of dominance and surrender. "And now you have me, finally. All of me." The night became a private storm, a reckoning of months of tension, playful banter, and suppressed desire. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered word was a promise, a confession, a claim. And when they finally collapsed against each other, bodies intertwined, hearts racing, the fire was no longer contained. It burned bright, relentless, and unmistakable, their own controlled inferno, theirs alone, untouchable, explosive. Epilogue, Aftermath. The boardroom was quiet now, the storm having passed. Elena's resignation had been formalized, the regulatory inquiry contained, and the stock stabilizing. Voss Enterprise had survived intact, untouchable, and more resilient than ever. Stefania leaned against her desk, still catching her breath from the intensity of the last weeks. Months of danger, high-stakes maneuvering, and flirtation had led here, and yet her thoughts weren't on spreadsheets or logs. They were on Amara. Amara entered the office, black suit softened into evening elegance, the corners of her eyes carrying both fatigue and triumph. Her gaze found Stefania, dark and smoldering as always. "You've been incredible," Amara said, voice low, intimate, brushing over Stefania like velvet flame. "Every step, every decision, you kept the company and me alive." Stefania smiled, feeling the tension that had always simmered between them transform into a quiet, steady heat. "We did it together. You and I." Amara closed the distance, letting her hand find Stefania's, fingers intertwining. "Together," she echoed, eyes searching hers, full of fire and something softer, almost trembling. They walked to the large windows overlooking the city skyline. The lights glittered like embers in a dark night, and Stefania realized that the chaos, the danger, the tension, it had all led them here, to this quiet, private victory. "I never thought I could admit it," Stefania said softly, thumb brushing along Amara's hand, "how much I needed this. Needed you." Amara's lips curved, a dangerous, teasing smile. "Needed me," she murmured, stepping closer until the heat between them was undeniable. "I've been feeling that fire too, waiting, controlled, because I wanted to make sure it was real. That you were real." Stefania laughed softly, a mixture of relief and desire. "It's real. Always real." Amara cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing over her cheekbones. "Then let's not hide anymore," she whispered, voice husky. "No more restraint. No more holding back." Their kiss was slow, deliberate, carrying months of longing, tension, and unspoken confessions. Every touch was a claim, every caress a promise. They melted into each other, their fire finally free, unstoppable, and theirs alone. Stefania rested her head against Amara's chest, listening to the steady beat of her heart. "So, what now?" she asked softly, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Amara chuckled, low and dangerous, lips brushing Stefania's temple. "Now, we burn together," she whispered. Outside, the city continued, oblivious to the private inferno that had consumed two women who had once been careful, cautious, controlled. Inside, the office had never been hotter, nor more alive. They stayed there for a long while, holding each other, letting the quiet aftermath stretch into eternity. The breach was contained, the threat neutralized, and their connection, once simmering, now blazing, could finally breathe. And as the night deepened, the only sparks they needed were each other. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and like this video and follow me for more stories. You are always welcome here, and leave me a comment or a thumbs up, just letting me know if you like the story and would like more, or is there perhaps an idea that you would like to share or let me write for you.